KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, here to meet your urgent and emergent medical needs, whether they are COVID-19 related or not. Medical emergencies happen when you least expect them, whether it's a stroke, heart attack, illness, or injury. San Juan Regional Medical Center's caregivers are here to provide care to you and your loved ones. Find out more online at sanjuanregional.com. Ten minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Wednesday morning, July the 1st. Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Michlin. Thanks for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM here in New Mexico, 103.3 FM up in Colorado, and of course, streaming everywhere from our website at ksje.com. Coming up in just a moment, we are talking about the future of air travel here in the Farmington region. Mike Lewis, Four Corners Regional Airport Manager, is going to be my guest, so we hope you'll stay tuned for that conversation. It's coming up in the next few moments, right here on KSJE. Then, of course, we'll check in with Dr. Mike Hadabaugh coming up at 8:50. It's our weekly trip to the Encouragement Lab. Dr. Hadabaugh will be talking with us about another great piece of advice for communication and relationships. That's coming up at 8:50 a.m. on KSJE. Next hour, of course, Mick Hess takes us roving with the arts, and today Mick is playing music from Empire Brass. They're featuring some Bach compositions. That's coming up on a special 90-minute version of Roving with the Arts today at 9:06 a.m. And then, of course, it's 10:30 right on Four Corners, our local and regional author program. Tracy Hales-Vass is going to be speaking with author H. Lee Barnes about his latest book called Life is a Country Western Song. Lots of things to take on from that coming up this morning at 10:30 right here on KSJE. In addition to Facebook and YouTube, of course, we invite you to connect with us on Twitter and on Instagram. And let's talk about the weather for just a moment. Today, mostly sunny skies, 89 for a high in Farmington today. It'll be clear and 54 overnight. Tomorrow and on Friday, mostly sunny skies, but both days have a chance of a scattered shower or thunderstorm popping up in the afternoon. The high each day near 90 and the overnight lows near 60. Sunshine on Saturday with a high of 93, mid-90s on Sunday, and 96 for a high on Monday and Tuesday with lots of sunshine in the forecast. Joining me now in our visual radio studio to talk a little bit about the work at the Four Corners Regional Airport in Farmington. Airport Manager Mike Lewis is here. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. It's real good to see you again, Scott.
Good to have you back. You bet.
Absolutely.
You have been a busy guy at the airport for the last couple of years because it's a major, and when I say major, that's capital M, right? Major project at the airport these last few years.
Absolutely. As most everyone knows, we lost air service in December of 2017 when Great Lakes pulled out. And prior to them leaving, we started work on what are we going to do next.
Right.
And so one of the first things we did was meet with prospective carriers that could replace them, and one of those carriers was SkyWest. We made a visit to their headquarters in St. George, Utah, and one of the things that came out of the meeting was they were interested in Farmington. However, the category of the runway was not such that they could operate regional jets.
And so, part of that also was some regulations that had changed too around the same time or right before this period?
Yeah, right
true?
Before that. Absolutely.
Because I know a lot of old timers are going to watch the show and say, "But Scott, I remember when they used to have gigantic planes."
Right. Well, there was a series of aircraft overruns on runways. One of them being at Midway, where Southwest went through the fence, and a couple others, and that changed the regulations.
Sure.
Because years ago, matter of fact, in the mid '80s, Frontier Airlines out of Denver used to operate jets here.
Yeah.
Aspen Airways operated jets here. That was 30 years ago. But the regulations had changed considerably, and a lot of it had to do with the overrun capability off the end of the pavement.
Right.
Is that adequate for aircraft to, in case there is an overrun, safely come to a stop?
Right. And our airport and runway is unique among many, right?
Exactly. It's much like an aircraft carrier.
Right.
Anybody who's flown in and out or been up there realizes that off the ends of the runways in almost any direction, we have a drop-off because we're on a mesa. We're completely surrounded by lower property, lower real estate. So we had to take advantage of maximizing what overrun capability we had at the airport.
Right. I always tell people you don't come in for a landing in Farmington. It comes up to meet you.
That's right.
When you're flying into
Absolutely.
town.
I think a few pilots actually expect to see arresting cables, but we don't have any.
Not yet. No, that's true. Like an aircraft carrier would.
Right,
That's
right,
true.
exactly.
So with all that being said, you got to work and your staff got to work in trying to figure out how to use that existing space, because you really can't affordably extend the length of the mesa to make the runways any longer.
Right.
So what do you do, right?
Well, actually, what we had to do is it ended up being an awful lot of dirt work. We had to do some fill on the west side. We had to do a little bit of fill on the east side, and just and also too on the sides of the runways. We had to grade those to within the specifications in case, for an example, an aircraft departs the runway midway down the field.
Okay. You got to have room for that.
We have
on
room
the
for that,
sides.
and it has to be a very friendly environment that'll make it a very non-eventful
Which is what you want when you're in the airport
Exactly.
business. Yes.
No strong events. Everything has to be calm and gentle.
As
That's
an air
correct.
traveler, I appreciate that very, very much.
Absolutely,
So you sent me some pictures, too, of some of
That's
this
right.
work that we can share for
Absolutely.
our viewers who are watching us this morning. And so I wanted to share some of those. So this shows us maybe some of the work. And so this is at the airport on the Mesa.
Absolutely.
And so we're seeing kind of some of the staking out of what's going to happen.
Absolutely. The truck in the foreground is a surveying crew. You can see some of their gear set up there. An awful lot of that grading that took place required a phenomenal amount of surveying to make sure that everything was at the right angles and the right slope and so forth.
Right. You don't want any bumps when you're coming in for a landing or taking off for a
That's
flight.
right.
So
Well, nice and smooth.
even I know that. But yeah, that's
Smooth
true.
is the key.
Right.
And as you can see in the background, there's a pavement roller.
Right.
We had to do a little bit of pavement work in a couple of areas to complete the project in order to have this higher class of aircraft operate here. Higher class, I mean bigger and faster aircraft.
Gotcha.
Regional jets.
Right. And the price tag on this project, Mike Lewis, have you
Well,
totaled it all up yet?
Oh, absolutely. It was up to just about $3.4 million total.
Okay.
Now, and I think I bring this up every time I come here. The FAA actually pays 95.65% of the cost. The remainder of the cost is split between the city and the state. The State Department of Transportation Aviation Department has funding from the state to help with
Okay.
this project. So the by far lion's share is through airport improvement funds that are set aside basically from a fund that's created by ticket tax. For every time somebody buys a ticket, 10% of the money from that ticket goes into this fund, and it's made to keep the aviation system in the United States up to speed and modern and
Gotcha.
good repair.
So this is what's going to every other airport
That's right.
in the country, basically, that's applying
right.
for this money.
right.
And I would think the state sees this as an economic driver, too, to make sure you have airports in good repair and in good stead
Absolutely.
in all corners of the state,
Absolutely.
right?
And
Not
that's
just Albuquerque.
That's correct, and that's part of the mission of the New Mexico Aviation Department is to assist in that process. Of course, the FAA is mandated to help keep the system modern. So yeah.
Right. And of course, as we know, even when we don't have commercial service, the airport still helps with other things like freight and
Right.
medical transports and
Yeah.
private pilots and all the other
Right.
types of things that use the facilities up there.
Absolutely. We're one of the busiest airports with what's called general aviation. And general aviation is basically anything that is, it's easier to tell what it isn't.
Right.
It isn't military and it isn't commercial airline. Everything else is general aviation, like corporate
Okay.
flying, air ambulance flying, freight.
My second day air packages come in.
That's correct.
That way.
Every day. UPS and FedEx are in every day and out every evening. Since the last time I talked to you, we attracted another air ambulance company. So the San Juan Regional Medical Center has their ambulance.
Right.
There's another company that's also operating there, and they are both just really busy.
Okay.
And especially this spring with everything that's been going on with the virus.
Oh, I'm afraid so, yeah.
It's kept them very, very busy.
Okay. But now, all this talk that we're talking about with this project is leading up to the resumption, hopefully, in the next few months,
Right.
of commercial air service. And that is, I guess, even better use of that facility, correct?
Absolutely,
If you can
absolutely.
have passenger service.
Absolutely. I think it really provides a very tangible, very visible return to the community to have commercial air service. As you're probably aware, the city of Farmington is embarking on being a leader in outdoor recreation, both for those that enjoy that recreation and hopefully to attract manufacturers or testers of that equipment.
Right.
And it's vital that we have air service to get these people in here to enjoy what we have to offer to them.
Right, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute, but I do want to get back to some of these pictures too, because it's got a lot of cool equipment and things that I want to show everybody about. So here we are, more dirt. You're moving a lot of dirt up there.
Absolutely.
And this was, so was the runway actually taken up and then
No.
started over? This is just
No.
along the side?
This is that particular picture is off the end of the runway.
The end, okay.
And what we had to do was, in order to count the entire length of the mesa off the end of that runway as overrun space, there was a little area where there was like a valley in there. We had to fill that.
I see. So you did do some extensions of the mesa in
Right,
certain
right,
small
exactly.
areas,
Just a
right?
little bit where we filled in.
It's still a lot of dirt, though.
Right, absolutely. And the good thing was that we actually got the dirt from the north side of the field.
Okay.
They basically scraped it up, didn't dig a huge hole, they just
Sure.
scraped it up from the surface and hauled it across the runway and dumped it over there. And
Gotcha.
And it all had to be engineered and put in there just right so it wouldn't erode back out again. And then when we were done, we graded the whole thing so it met the spec, and
Right.
and we went from there.
Always drainage issues and other things when you're dealing with mesas and
That's right.
desert and dirt and everything
That's
everything
right.
else. Another picture here of looks like almost the same area.
Yeah, it's almost the same area. It shows some of the other equipment that was there.
Yep.
Massive number of trucks. They hauled tens of thousands of yards of dirt over there to dump, and then the other equipment is what's needed to make sure that it goes to the right spot and gets compacted and so forth and so on to meet the specs.
Right, right. And again, this has been a project for multiple years, right?
That's right,
We've been working
absolutely.
on this, so that's what we're talking about.
This is a project where we overhauled a taxiway. It's outside of the $3.4 million we spent this year. That was a couple of years ago. But the taxiway had reached the end of its useful life, sort of like a road. It had a lot of cracks and a lot of crack seal in it. Wasn't really level any longer, and probably wouldn't be able to hold up real well with heavier aircraft. So we, again, in that case, were able to secure a grant and be able to rebuild a couple of the taxiways that we had out there.
Got you. And I know we talked a little bit about the aircraft that do use the Four Quarters Regional Airport and general aviation.
Right.
We know a lot about the smaller private planes
Right.
and the air freight planes and things
Right.
like that, but we do get some military
Oh, yeah.
planes, and those are pretty big
Yeah,
planes,
absolutely.
aren't they, that do
Absolutely.
land there from time to time?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We the Air National Guard in Albuquerque, their mission is turned from operating F-16 fighters to being a training operation.
Okay.
And they train in this strange airplane that I'm sure everybody has seen and definitely heard flying around the Farmington area. It's the Osprey.
Right.
It's a vertical takeoff aircraft. It's kind of noisy, makes a lot of vibration, but they're based in Albuquerque, and they come up and do quite a bit of training. We also,
And this is the plane, pardon me for interrupting, this is the one that can lift off vertically,
That's
almost
right.
like a helicopter, right? The engines
Right,
actually
absolutely.
rotate.
Can lift off vertically, can take a very short takeoff and lift, and it's a very versatile aircraft used by the Air Force in their special operations squadrons. They also bring up a C-130. That's the larger, big 4-engine turboprop that comes in, and usually they just do touch and goes. The military likes our airport because we have a active control tower. We also have all different kinds of instrument approaches that they can use to be able to practice with. The altitude and the terrain is very similar to a lot of places that the military operates in the Middle East, so it makes a very, very good training ground. In addition, in the last couple of years, the University of North Dakota has a separate branch down in the Phoenix metro area, and sometimes they'll bring up 1 or 2 airplanes and spend all day up here with students doing touch and goes, which is good for us because the FAA looks favorable on us for the number of operations that we have. So
Right.
it's really a good thing. They're using a great aircraft. It's not loud, and it really helps us,
Right.
keep up with everything.
Well, I would think when the FAA is looking at ways to spend their money and,
Right.
and get these grants out and things like
Absolutely.
that, they're looking at maybe how busy
That's
your
right.
facility is,
Absolutely.
how many other communities use it or have partnered with you.
That's right.
Those types of things.
That's right.
So that's what we're talking about.
We also, and a lot of people don't realize, we also have 130 airplanes based there. That
Right.
means 130 airplanes that are locally owned, some by partnerships, some by corporations, but most of them by individuals.
Sure.
That fly in the weekends or travel, in the western part of the U.S. And so there's quite a few airplanes and hangars up there.
Right, which is a good thing too, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Right? If you're a private pilot, you can
Absolutely.
store your aircraft
You've
there.
got a great first-class facility to use if you're a private pilot. Absolutely.
Indeed. Let me go back to these photos here and show a couple more. This is, again, the paving that you talked about. There's
Right.
the tower in the background that you mentioned. And
That's right.
Of course, we're somewhat unique because we are the only regional airport in the
quite a ways.
area that has a tower.
Absolutely. The closest one is Santa Fe or Pueblo, Colorado, or I believe there's one in Flagstaff, Arizona. Those are the closest ones.
Okay.
Durango or Cortez or Alamosa or none of those, they don't have towers.
And without a tower, then it's pretty much an automated then system? Is that how these airports work? Or
the way it works is they have a frequency that all of the pilots use. Basically what they do is they control themselves. So for an example, if I'm going into an uncontrolled airport, I'll call in on that frequency, hey, I'm 10 miles south of the field, I plan on landing such and such runway. If there's somebody in the area of the runway, they will then announce themselves and say, I'm on short final, or I'm 5 miles out on the way in, and that kind of thing. And then they try to see each other visually or just keep track of where they are.
But they're all doing it on their own.
They're all doing it on their own
Nobody's
between themselves.
double-checking anybody.
Nobody's in the middle of it.
Okie
That's
dokie.
right.
All right.
But it works well. I mean,
Right.
it sounds a little different, but it really, really works well.
And of course, the tower here can certainly see air traffic in Durango, can't they? And
They can, but they can't see it down close to the ground where
I see.
where they can control airplanes going in and out of Durango.
Gotcha.
They're basically responsible for
Those are longer flights, aren't they? Or
Yeah.
cross-country flights, things like
Right,
that,
right.
handing things off to another
Well,
area?
Yeah, they really control a fairly small area of airspace.
Okay.
5 mile radius is basically
see.
what they deal with, and anybody has to call when they're coming into that radius. The really high overhead stuff that you see that leaves the contrails, the wing,
Yes, right.
That's
That's
they don't
another
have
whole
anything to do with
system.
that. Anything above that, basically. But they do deliver clearances to aircraft that are leaving on an instrument flight plan. They help them close their flight plans, and they give direction to the hospital as far as their helicopter as it operates from the hospital,
Right.
and any other remote area that's close. So that's basically what their
Gotcha.
job is.
But it's important that we have a tower at our
Right.
airport,
Absolutely.
I would think, for that reasons and some others, too.
It certainly is.
So,
And like I was saying before, the self-control works really well
Mm-hmm.
until you get busy. If the air traffic really picks up, it makes it a little bit more difficult to self-control. It's much, much safer to have the tower.
Sure. And what about weather? Would that be an impact, too?
Absolutely.
If you're coming in and you're not sure what the conditions are on the ground?
Right. Absolutely. Now we do have what's called an ASOS, Automatic Surface Observation System. It's a computerized weather station. It's in the center part of the airport.
I see.
That gives all of the pilots, it gives them visibility, density, altitude, air, wind speed and direction, temperature, dew point. Temperature dew point allows them to determine whether it's going to be foggy or it's going to rain, and gives them everything that they really need in order to do that. The tower gives them the last minute wind,
Right.
and that kind of information as
Gotcha.
they're making their way into the airport.
Understood. And I think when we're talking about the resumption of commercial air service, one of the things is that can affect an airport's operations is weather. And I don't think I can recall a time when maybe Farmington's had to close, maybe just once or twice because of wind, but
No.
not for any reasons the other ones would have to close, like
Yeah.
like snow or
Right.
sleet or one of that stuff, right?
Well, I've
Usually.
been here since 2014.
I don't want to jinx it. Watch this
No,
winter,
no,
everybody.
I
We're
know.
going to have the worst
and I know
sleet
you did that. I know
ever.
you, and we'll remember that.
I know you will.
And we'll specifically call you when
Please
we close.
do. I know.
I've been here since 2014, and we've never closed the airport.
Right.
Basically, we have state-of-the-art snow removal equipment. We have 2 large trucks and a couple of smaller trucks that we can use to remove snow. We have a priority system where we keep the main instrument runway open. If it's really, really snowing hard, which it's only done a couple of times since I've been up there,
Yeah.
we just concentrate on that runway and the pathway between that runway and the terminal and the air ambulance companies to get them in and out.
Right.
Once the snow stops, then we start working on the rest of the airport. But it never closes.
Which is a good thing if you're trying to
Absolutely.
get people to other places on
That's
time.
right.
And so.
And as far as wind is concerned, we have 2 runways. So it's very rare that we would ever have a wind condition that would have an adverse effect because they just shift which runway they use.
Right.
For an example, in Durango, they have 1 runway. It's oriented roughly north-south, which makes it a little bit difficult because they get a lot of westerly wind like we do.
Sure.
And since I've been here, we've had 2 or 3 flights going into Durango that diverted to Farmington to wait for the wind to shift so they could get into Durango.
In there safely. Interesting. Well, and they're kind of a little bit protected maybe by some of those other mountains around them, but still
Well,
it can come in there, right?
Yeah, it sure
I guess,
can. It sure
obviously.
can come in.
So there
Yep.
you go. Here's another shot of the airport runway improvements here in Farmington, and this was another shot of what are we looking at here?
We're looking at some of that taxiway overhaul.
I see.
You can see where they put in some pavement, fresh pavement there. Of course, that mess they left on the runway gets cleaned up before we open it.
Right.
But that just gives you an idea of the magnitude of what we did. It just amazes me, as you see on the left side there, that white truck, another surveying crew out there. That pavement that's laid in there has to meet FAA specifications that are within a half an inch of height across the whole span of the taxiway, which is just incredible to me
Right.
that they can actually build something that precisely.
Right, sure.
And they did it, and they did a great job, and
There you go.
it's really in good shape.
That's true. Very good. Now, this is a maybe older picture or older part of the airport?
This is something different. This
Okay.
is one of our runways, 523. That was something we did this year. You can see the very beginning of it. They went in, and where those cracks are, they sealed those with the liquid tar
Right.
or material that they use. And then they went back over, and where you can see the black there, eventually they covered the entire runway with what's called a top coat.
I see.
It preserves that runway. It'll give us a few more years of use out of it. Because what basically happens to pavement is the sun and the UV radiation dries it out, and it continues to dry, and then pieces of it start to break up and so forth. This is like a rejuvenator. It's a liquid that gets sprayed on and dries and seals it again, re-moisturizes the top layers of the asphalt, and we've been able to delay the overhaul of that runway until 2023. That's our plan now.
I see. Okay.
We'll go back in there and we'll tear up we'll mill down some of the pavement and completely resurface
This is the
it.
second runway that you were talking
Right.
about, and then you have the
Right.
first one that's been totally redone. Is what we're
Right.
talking about.
The
this
first
morning.
one was totally redone about 3 years ago, and this
Yeah.
one here is coming up. It's
Gotcha.
good that we have them staggered. We don't want to do them both at the
Sure.
same time.
Right.
Now, there in that picture, you can see the completely.
This is the new one that we
Yep,
can see
this
right
is
there in the
done.
middle of the picture there, and
That's
some
right.
of the earthwork that looks like
Yeah,
pretty
you
fresh.
sure can. Anything of that tan
Yeah.
or lighter color on both sides of the runway, and of course off this end.
Mm-hmm.
This is the west end of the runway looking east. You can see where a lot of that dirt work went in.
So we're seeing just as you said, looking east, and so the road in the front is Main Street. That's kind of
That's right.
coming up, going up
That's
to
what's
Harper
Main.
Hill would be behind us,
Yeah,
and
that's
downtown
right.
is ahead of us.
That's correct.
And Apache is right there, the
goes
cross
right
street
through
there.
That's correct.
So anyway,
But you can see there that runway is the one that was seal coated. You
Right.
can see how nice and dark it is.
Sure.
We completely revamped it and repainted it. So
and here we can see the two runways that you mentioned
Right, you
too,
can see
very
the
clearly.
intersection, that's correct.
Of how things can
Right.
shift over if
Right.
if one is better to use than the other.
that's
one.
right. The dark one is runway 523. Those numbers represent the magnetic heading of the runway.
Right.
So if you were looking up the runway that way, that's at 50 degrees. You see what I mean? And 90
Right.
being due east. And this end is 23, so it's 230 degrees. The other one is 725. And it runs at, when it runs eastbound, it's at 70 degrees, which is about 20 degrees south of due east. And 25 is almost west.
Gotcha. And so as we can see now, it looks like there's a little more room at the end, like
That's
you
right.
mentioned.
That's right.
And this is all for these new regulations
That's
that have
right.
gone in, and then they haven't changed them since you started this, right?
No,
so
no,
they're
no.
still the same.
No, I think being relatively new that they probably won't change for some time.
And so this puts Farmington in play now to
That's
attract these other potential commercial
Right.
carriers, right, for
Right.
passenger service.
That's correct.
And that's where SkyWest comes back into the picture.
Right. They're a regional jet operator. They've expressed some incredible interest in operating here, and we're working to try to firm up that program with them.
They still think that there's enough air traffic. We were talking
Right.
before about some
Right.
people go to Albuquerque, some will go to Durango,
Right.
maybe but it's not the majority of travelers
It
necessarily.
was very surprising in the marketing study that we did that over 80% of the people that fly, we looked at a 90-minute driving radius of Farmington Airport, and over 80% of those people drive to Albuquerque to get on the airplane. So we feel that there's a great opportunity to be able to pick those people up here in their hometown, save them the 3-hour drive, and allow them to make their connections to anywhere in the world.
Right. Now, I know you always hear from folks about ticket prices, Mike Lewis, and I know that's sometimes harder to keep them maybe as low as you'd like to at a smaller airport than maybe a larger airport. But
well, I
what
don't
do you
know.
think?
I don't know necessarily that size of the airport has so much to do with it, because the major carrier partners always try to make a deal to get people to fly on the long haul portion of the flight.
Okay.
As far as fares are concerned, I don't see that there'll be anything higher than what we're used to in this area. I think we'll have reasonable fares.
Would these new then be able to attract these regional jets, make fares a little bit more affordable than the other types of aircraft that we're flying in before? Is that a more economical aircraft to operate? I don't know.
Well, I think they're about the same, because what you do is you take the regional jet and you load everybody on, 50 people on one, rather than putting them in two different groups onto a turboprop.
I see.
The turboprops that have operated very successfully in Farmington for many, many years have just been pretty much regulated out of the sky. There's been a pilot shortage that we've spoken about before that's created a situation in which air carriers want to use bigger airplanes to take advantage of that rare commodity of an airline pilot in today's world, and therefore a lot of the smaller aircraft just aren't economically feasible
Gotcha.
to operate any longer.
Gotcha. And so your conversations with SkyWest are talking about these 50-passenger
Yeah, it's
aircraft.
a CRJ 200. It's been around quite a while. It's a 50-passenger regional jet.
Okay.
It's probably one of the most common regional jets in the country, and it's used all over the world.
Gotcha. And so as you have these conversations with SkyWest about starting these flights and things like that, there's obviously talk about different markets and things like that, or where they would go. That's still being talked about, correct?
As far as different
From
markets.
Farmington to wherever the
Well,
destination
I think
markets, right?
primarily we're looking at flying to Denver.
Okay.
Because they are a United Express carrier.
I see.
And United is a big hub player in Denver. And we'd like to take that traffic, and rather than driving to Albuquerque, put them on our regional jet out of our hometown and take them to Denver to make connections on United.
Got you. And the feedback you're getting from the business community, again, about having, again, the opportunity for commercial service right out of their own town.
Biggest feedback I get is when.
Right.
When. I'm ready now.
Right.
We want to go. We had to drive to Albuquerque. We want to go today. So we're getting a lot of excitement out of the business community, as well as just other members of the community. I think through all the events of this spring, everybody's been pretty much pent up.
Right.
I think that's created, again, pent-up demand. And I think once things open up, that we're going to see quite a bit of travel.
Sure. I know there's a lot of apprehension maybe right now,
Right.
but I know folks are working on ways to do this safely, and again, with all
Right.
the other medical and healthy things to follow, and so that's all part of these conversations, I'm sure.
Exactly. And watching air traffic, and I've watched it very closely, one of the measures I've looked at is how many passengers does TSA screen every day in the country.
I see that number.
And back in April, it got as low as like 87,000 in one day. Normally, it would have been somewhere between 2.7 and 2.9 million a day.
Okay.
It's recently, as of last week, I haven't picked up the numbers this week, I bet they're higher. Last week they just about reached 600,000 per day. So they're on their way back.
Okay.
United and Delta specifically, and I'm sure some of the other carriers, have added quite a few flights back in July, coming up this next month. So it was about 2 weeks ago when the number of airplanes that are flying exceeded the number parked for the first time in 3 months.
That's encouraging.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Everything is headed in the right direction, or at least up. Again, I mean, just like everybody that's been home all spring and wanting to go somewhere on vacation or to visit relatives, a lot of business people need to get out and do the things that they need to do in order to keep their business moving forward. So
Right. And certainly Farmington wants to be a part of that.
Absolutely.
In the future.
Absolutely.
And I know, and the city has been very supportive, the city council, I know, of your efforts.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
They see the importance of commercial service in and out of Farmington for the tourist, for the business opportunities, as we mentioned.
Absolutely, yes. Very, very supportive all along the entire journey that we've gone on. Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. And I had one other question I wanted to ask you, Mike Lewis, about the future at work. And so the hopeful date is sometime in the fall, right? Are we still looking at October?
We're looking at October, somewhere in there. And we're working towards that date now. We've got a lot of things we have to do to reestablish the security checkpoint. We had
That's
security
with
here.
TSA, right?
Right,
Yeah.
with TSA. We had that here then, but they had to leave with the carrier left, and now we're having to reestablish that. There's been some difficulty. The government's working at home too.
Right.
A lot of the people I deal with
Sure.
I'm talking to them from their living room, so it kind of has a tendency to kind of slow things down. But they're very willing to do whatever they can do to try to make everything work out for us. So.
And I have to mention one of the unique things about our airport, the Farmington Airport, Four Corners Regional Airport, is the crazy free parking that you offer people when they come up there. Is that going to change?
Not at all.
There's still free parking. You're the only airport that I know of that offers free parking.
That's right.
So
yeah, because we all agree, and I mean the city council agrees, the mayor, city manager. This is an asset to the city, and we want to make this as great an asset as we possibly can, and to make it easy for the people in this community to be able to use their hometown airport. So I don't think we'll see any change in that anytime soon.
Okay.
The best thing is hopefully we'll have to expand it someday.
Well, wouldn't that be nice, right?
Yes, that's what we're looking for.
There you go. Well, we'll have you back to talk about that one.
Okay.
And maybe
Sounds
a little
great.
quicker, a little sooner when we get towards the fall and see how things
Absolutely.
are looking with SkyWest. But
We'll be back.
good luck with your conversations with them, and congratulations on this project.
Thank you so much for having me in this morning.
You're very welcome. That is Mike Lewis. He is the airport manager here in Farmington, Four Corners Regional Airport. My guest here on KSJE. Back with more in just a moment, everybody. This program on KSJE is supported by Citizens Trust and Investment Corporation, providing a competent, innovative, and caring team of professionals to serve wealth management, trust administration, employee benefit plans, retirement planning, and estate settlement needs. Find out more about Citizens Trust and Investment Corporation at 505-599-0181.